Okay, good evening everybody. Tonight I'm going to talk to you about mud larking. Mud larking is the best hobby ever. It really is one of the most fantastic things one can do. For a long time I thought it was the best kept secret in London, and then everybody discovered it, and now it's like Piccadilly Circus. But I will have you know that I once found one of those battery operated devices on the foreshore. You'll find everything when you go mud larking. So basically mud larking is going to the foreshore or going to a river at low tide and seeing what you can find. And that's really what it is. When people talk about mud larking, is that better? When people talk about mud larking, they're usually associated with the Thames because the original term relates to children who used to go onto the foreshore and collect coal and things that they could sell to make a living, things like canvas and rope and all that kind of stuff. So that's, I guess, where the name comes from, but we use it more loosely than that, and anyone who goes to a river at low tide or goes crashing out in the mud looking for things is basically a mud lark. Okay, so it is the Thames foreshore. I'm going to talk about quite a lot, but there are some places here where you can go, and I'll mention a couple of those as well. The Thames foreshore mud is anaerobic, which means there's no oxygen, and so absolutely everything gets preserved, right? Even things that you think wouldn't get preserved do get preserved, and it's an incredibly rich archaeological site, and the Port of London Authority has been quite progressive in letting whoever would like to go and look there, go and pick things up and take them home. So I think that's actually quite an interesting distinction. You don't find that everywhere else. It's actually a very peaceful thing to do. We go mudlarking at night, me and my pals. I met some incredible people while mudlarking and introduced others to it. It's very, very quiet on the foreshore, contrary to what you might think, and it's actually a wonderful thing to do. So what we're looking for when we go mudlarking is anything from Roman stuff through to the current day, the present day. And a Roman find is always a really good thing. So here are some of the things I found that are Roman. These are Moratoria, basically like abrasive surfaces that they make relishes and sauces and things like that, but like a pestle and mortar type thing. And the one on the left is usually like a saucer shape thing with a spout, and the one on the right is actually a lion head spout, and that's a little bit more fancy. So whenever you find anything like that, it's usually quite a good thing, quite a fun thing to do. That is a recreation of the lion head that I showed you before. So that's basically what it might look like. You find lots of bits of mosaics and things like that. Some of those are Roman, not all of them are, but it's just great fun, and you never know what you're going to find, and you really will find some gems. So I like to go mudlarking, and I always am looking for an excuse to do it. So Jordan over there is my wife, but at the time she was my girlfriend, and I thought I would take her mudlarking because that's a fun thing to do, and I'll show her what I know, and I'll impress her with all my wonderful finds. And the opposite happened. Jordan had the most incredible stroke of what I think is beginner's luck, and she found these two things. On the left is a crocodile scoot, which is the bony thing on the back of a crocodile. That is such a cool find, you just got no idea. She found that under Blackfriars Bridge, and she also found a piece of worked flint, which God knows how old that is. And it's razor sharp today, and it's just the most incredible pair of finds. It was a memorable day for me as well, because Jordan certainly wasn't impressed with my mudlarking skills, but that was the day she actually proposed to me by writing it in the mud, and that's how we got together. So that was a good few years later, and I thought, yes, please. Right, so I said to you before that everything gets preserved. It really, I do mean absolutely everything gets preserved. And I've got a couple of examples here. We've got a few bones and some Victorian umbrella stands and things like that. But the type of things you will find there a lot are bones. So back in the day, years and years ago, the abattoirs and they would just chuck all the refuse into the river, and you find a lot of that today. You can find teeth and jaw bones and everything like that, and some of them have got signs of butchery and things like that. But it's just literally as far as the eye can see in some parts of the foreshore, you can just pick up these really, really interesting bones. Some of the bones are worked, so we've got something there which is sort of like buttons, I would think. and a handle of sorts, also a very interesting thing to find. Wood gets preserved. We've got a handle over there and a brush of some sorts over there, and even leather. So you will find shoes, some of them even more intact than that. And you can actually go and find them and look at them and take them home. Also signs of what people were wearing, also very interesting. And one of my favorite things to find are handmade Tudor pins. So if you look really, really closely in the foreshore and you literally put your face in the dirt, you find, again, really incredible things. And I like to find the beauty in small things, and I cannot get enough of these pins. So this is how I've displayed them. I've got loads and loads and loads, and each one is handmade, and you can literally go and find them. And that's just one of the things that makes me happy. The other thing that makes me happy is also picking up Leadshot and things like that. You find a lot of that. Also very, very small things. They look like bubbles, but in fact it's just a whole bunch of Leadshot. So that kind of gives you an idea of the sorts of things one can do. But for me, I really, really love it when I find something that has some kind of personal touch or connection with the past. And here are some of the pottery finds that I've collected, and you can actually see the finger marks of the people on each of those. So you've got 3 fingers there, you've got someone doing something there to make a handle or a spout, and this one is actually a piece of Roman pottery. So those fingerprints are 1,700 years old. And where I found those in a wood, the Roman stuff in a wood, in Hampshire, and the Alice Holt Wood is the site of a number of Roman kilns, production sites, and if you know where to go, you can actually pull the car off the side of the road next to a bus stop, and you can just sweep away the leaf litter, and you can find hundreds of pieces of Roman pottery. Most of it is unremarkable, so it's literally just, greyware, nothing to write home about. But a lot of it has got patterns on it, some of it has got some slip on it. You've got rims and all sorts of interesting shapes, and if you want to spend an afternoon doing that, you will find really, really interesting things, including, very, very old fingerprints. So I think for me, that's one of the best things to do with one's day. The next one's here also quite interesting. So there we have a pipe stem, loads and loads of pipe stems on the Thames, and those ones seem to have someone's teeth marks on them. You know, how you kind of maybe bite down on it. So that's quite interesting. And this one's not so clear, but this is a paw print on a very old, possibly medieval roof tile. Quite a few people have found those, and it makes us think that maybe dogs or animals were encouraged to walk on these wet tiles because, it's as a sort of a personalization thing, but it might just be that there were so many strays running about that it was unavoidable. But you do actually find that from time to time. This is a more recent one. This is a toothbrush with someone's name on it. It's Sheila. That's from a Victorian dump that's washing out on the Thames estuary in Essex. And I like to think that she didn't want her brothers to use her toothbrush, and so she put her name on it and said, "This is my toothbrush." But that's kind of cool. I like that a lot. So now there's some quirky things that go on the foreshore. So there are some things that we just don't know how they got there or why they are there. So this is amazing. On the Thames foreshore, in very specific places, you can find garnets. So if you look on the left there, you can actually see them almost lighting up the foreshore on a sunny day. There's one that I've picked up. And here's some that I've just put in a little bottle along with some Leadshot. Nobody knows why they're there. They certainly don't come from here. They're from India initially. They're not gem quality. So what are they doing here? And why are they there in that particular spot? So there's a lot of discussion about it. Everyone thinks they know. But my best theory is that it was actually used in like a sandblasting type situation, sort of for industrial purposes, because it is very abrasive. And that would make some kind of sense, but it's great fun to go on the foreshore and go and find them. It gets quite political, the whole mud larking scene. So people say, "Oh, you mustn't tell anybody, you're not allowed to tell anybody where you find the stuff," but I told those people some stuff too, you know, so it's like quite interesting how they're very protective of their sources, but it's about making rules up as you go along, which is always the hallmark of an interesting subculture. Right, the other thing that you can find on the Thames foreshore are quite a lot of lead type, right? So what's it doing there? So one of the theories is that people who worked at Fleet Street, when they did all the typesetting, it was too much of a faff to put it all back, so they'd chuck it over the bridge when they went home, right? So yeah, that you find those under Blackfriars Bridge quite a lot. But you also find them on the Thames estuary in Tilbury, so that doesn't sort of add up. But there is a lot of it. I've got hundreds and hundreds of bits of type. Some of it is actually actual words. So this is J.F. Donald, and it says wine merchant. And if I was so inclined, that might be an interesting research project to find out a bit more about that. But yes, there's lots and lots of lead type. No one knows exactly how it got there, but it's fun to find. The other thing we have are bone offcuts. So poking out of the foreshore one time, there was just a whole lot of these clearly off, bits of worked bone. Nobody knows, what happened or what they were making or why they were doing it there. There's a lot of traffic on the Thames, and so things get churned up quite a lot, and the erosion kind of basically destroys the foreshore. So if people don't pick these things up and log them with the Museum of London, which you're supposed to do if it's a significant thing, then they will be lost forever. And that's part of the thinking by allowing people to go and pick things up and take them home and show people and do things with them, because it's a one way of actually making sure that they don't get lost. So that was fun. Also, you find coral on the foreshore. That came over as ballast on a lot of the ships. Load up with ballast and then dump it all on the foreshore, and that's where you find kind of odd things like this sorts of coral. Now, there are other things on the foreshore that I think are just a little bit odd or a little bit interesting, and what I didn't expect when I was at one of the Victorian dumps was to find lots and lots of toothpaste tubes made of lead. And I subsequently found out that that was the case up until the Second World War. So all your stuff that you would use at home and everything like that was all made of lead, and you can go and pick them up today. I find that quite fascinating. There is also this thing about Lego. In the 90s, a whole load of Lego got washed overboard on one of the ships, and now it gets found on beaches all over the place, mainly in Cornwall and sometimes here. And you'll also see that those edges of that Lego block are worn away, and so that would suggest that it might be one of those. Also in the 90s, a whole bunch of rubber ducks went overboard, and they are also showing up all over the world. And it's actually been used by researchers to track what currents are doing. So it actually had an unexpected benefit. And then what happened was they would then continue with that research and then deliberately chuck loads and loads of rubber ducks overboard every now and then, and I suspect that was one of those. So that wasn't one of the original ones, sadly. You've also got quite interesting things like this. So on the left, we call them Thames Willies, but they're actually legs of pots that just look a bit rude, and weird-shaped rocks, which always causes a bit of a laugh. One of my favourite things is this fossil, which is a flint fossil, and it's urchin, sea urchin. You can actually see the patterns there. So that's really good. Now these activities don't come without risks. So here I found a leech on my forearm, so that's something that comes with the territory. When you're mudlarking anywhere, you really have to be sure about what the tides are doing, because in London you could die. If you get it wrong, you can't get off the foreshore. The water's not very clean, so you've got to be careful of that. And there's also a non-zero chance of getting Weil's disease, which is a rat-borne thing. And you have to be careful. So you shouldn't do what I do, which is if you find something, often if you want to know if it's bone or not or whatever, you put it in your mouth and you sort of bite on it, sort of thing. And I have done that before on the foreshore, which is not a clever thing to do. But yeah, so there are risks associated with it. You also need a license, by the way, to do this. But now, I'm running out of time. The present. One of the things I found now was this teddy, which I had to rescue, and I put it in the washing machine and took it home for one of our pets to find. There's a lot going on the foreshore now. Lots of votives, lots of religious activity, lots of crime stuff like loot, like stolen goods, firearms, all that stuff gets chucked in the Thames. Now I will tell you that whatever gets chucked in the Thames gets found. People think that's a good way to get rid of engagement rings and all kinds of jazz, and it's not. I promise you, within a week or 2 or 3 months, some mudlark is going to find it. So don't actually think it's a good way to dispose of anything. I also found this watch. It actually opens up, the front is on the back, and you can see, and it's just quite an interesting watch that actually still runs. I found this fragment of what looks like maybe a prayer or something. So that was kind of poignant and interesting. But my favorite find was, my favorite contemporary find was wrapped up in a Doritos bag. So I found a Doritos bag, and it had all this tape, and I thought, hey, I just got to find out what's in there. And inside we found a bunch of hard drives. Yeah, so I promise you, I was not going to have that anywhere near my house, and so I left it right there because I could just imagine all sorts of stuff on there and having to explain why I had that in my possession. So yeah, there's some really interesting things going on the foreshore. It's a very lively place. It always has been, and it continues to be. And now people are actually making a living out of writing books and doing TV shows and things like that. So it's not the best kept secret anymore, but it's certainly a good day out if you are looking for something like that to do. So if you've got any questions, ask me now.
Can we thank Kanna for a fabulous